10 years. 10 years since he last saw his sister's face. 10 years since the night that shattered their family like glass against concrete. And now, on a rain-soaked street corner in downtown Chicago, surrounded by the desperate and the forgotten, he found her. But the sister he discovered wasn't the little girl he remembered. She was a ghost of everything they'd lost, everything they'd hidden, and everything that was about to explode into the light. Stay with me, because what you're about to witness isn't just a story of reunion. It's a revelation that will make you question every family secret you've ever kept, every choice you've made to protect someone you love. The truth he uncovered that day didn't just change his life. It rewrote his entire childhood, exposed a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of wealth and power, and revealed that sometimes the people we think we're protecting are actually protecting us. The billionaire CEO stepped out of his black Mercedes that Tuesday morning with one purpose: a business meeting at the Hilton downtown. His driver offered an umbrella, but he waved it away. The November rain felt cleansing somehow, appropriate for a day that would wash away 10 years of carefully constructed lies. He didn't know that yet, of course. He was thinking about quarterly reports, about the merger that would make him even wealthier, about the empire he'd built from nothing after his family fell apart. He was thinking about everything except the one person who mattered most. Then he saw her. At first it was just a glimpse, a profile that made his heart stop mid-beat. A young woman sitting on the cold pavement, her back against a closed storefront, a cardboard sign resting against her knees. The rain had soaked through her thin jacket, plastering dark hair against her hollow cheeks. But it was her eyes that froze him in place. Those eyes. He would have recognized them anywhere, in any condition, in any lifetime. They were his mother's eyes. They were his eyes. They were the eyes that had looked up at him with complete trust the last time he'd seen her, when she was just 12 years old and he was 17, the night their world ended. His legs moved before his mind could catch up. The business meeting vanished from his thoughts. The rain intensified, but he didn't feel it anymore. All he felt was the thundering of his own heartbeat and the impossible weight of recognition. She didn't see him approaching. Her gaze was fixed on nothing, on everything, on the kind of middle distance that people develop when they've learned to exist rather than live. Her sign read simply, "Hungry. Anything helps. God bless." The handwriting was shaky but careful, and something about those deliberate letters broke something inside his chest. He stopped 3 feet away from her, his expensive Italian shoes now soaked through, his tailored suit clinging to his shoulders. For a moment he couldn't speak. What do you say to a ghost? What do you say to the person you've searched for in every crowd for a decade? What do you say when you've rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in your head, and now that it's here, every single word has abandoned you? It's me. His voice came out as a whisper, barely audible over the rain and the traffic and the pounding of his own pulse. She didn't respond. Maybe she didn't hear. Maybe she'd learned not to respond to strangers on the street. Maybe she'd forgotten what family sounded like. He tried again, louder this time, dropping to his knees on the wet concrete so he could be at her level. "It's me. It's your brother." That's when her eyes finally focused on him. That's when recognition flickered across her face like lightning. There and gone and there again. Her lips parted. Her hands, thin and trembling, reached up as if to touch his face, then stopped halfway, hovering in the space between them like a question neither of them knew how to answer. "No," she whispered. "No, you can't be here. You can't be real. They said you were dead. They said you died in the accident with Mom and Dad. They said I was the only one who survived." The world tilted. The rain seemed to stop mid-fall. The sounds of the city faded into a distant hum. He stared at his sister, at this broken version of the little girl who used to follow him everywhere, who used to laugh at his terrible jokes, who used to believe he could protect her from anything. "What?" The word came out hollow. "What are you talking about? I've been looking for you for 10 years. After that night, after they took you away, I tried everything to find you. Mom and Dad, they told me you were placed with a family. They told me you were safe. They told me I couldn't see you because it was better for you to start over, to forget the past, to heal without reminders of what happened." She was shaking now, her whole body trembling like a leaf in a storm. tears mixed with rain on her face, and he couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. "They lied to you," she said, her voice cracking. "Just like they lied to me. I was never placed with a family. I was sent to foster care, house after house, family after family. And they all knew. They all knew who I was, where I came from, and they all treated me like I was cursed, like I carried some kind of disease. Do you know what it's like to be 12 years old and have people look at you like you were poison?" He reached for her hands, but she pulled back, pressing herself harder against the storefront wall. The rejection stung worse than any business failure, any financial loss. This was his sister, his baby sister, and she was afraid of him. Or maybe not afraid, maybe just too broken to believe in connection anymore. "I didn't know," he said, and the words felt pathetically inadequate. "I swear I didn't know. They told me you were adopted. They showed me papers. They said your new family wanted privacy, that it was part of the agreement that I had to stay away to honor your fresh start." "Papers can be forged," she said, and there was a bitterness in her voice that no 22-year-old should possess. "Money can buy any lie, and our parents had plenty of money, didn't they? Enough to make me disappear, enough to rewrite history, enough to turn you into this." She gestured at his suit, his watch, the Mercedes idling nearby with its hazard lights blinking. "You became them. You became everything they wanted, rich, successful, respectable, and I became the secret they buried." The accusation hung between them like a blade, sharp and unforgiving. He wanted to deny it, to explain that his success wasn't about becoming his parents, that he'd built his empire specifically to have the resources to find her, to make things right. But looking at her now, homeless and hollow-eyed on a Chicago street, what did his intentions matter? She was right. While he'd been climbing corporate ladders and signing million-dollar deals, she'd been surviving in a system designed to break people like her. While he'd been having lunch meetings in five-star restaurants, she'd been holding a cardboard sign begging for spare change. The distance between them wasn't measured in the 10 years they'd been apart. It was measured in every choice, every privilege, every door that had opened for him while slamming shut in her face. "You're right," he said quietly, and the admission felt like swallowing glass. "I did become them. Or at least, I thought I had to become them to undo what they did. After you disappeared, after they told me I couldn't look for you, I made a plan. I thought if I could become successful enough, powerful enough, wealthy enough, I could hire the best investigators. I could use connections they didn't have. I could find you and bring you home. But the more successful I became, the more I got caught up in the machine. Board meetings, acquisitions, international deals. I told myself I was still working toward finding you. But the truth is, I let the search fade into the background. I let my guilt turn into ambition, and my ambition turn into an excuse. I failed you. Not just once, but every single day for 10 years. She studied him with those haunting eyes, and he could see her trying to decide whether to believe him, whether to let him back in, whether forgiveness was even possible after a decade of abandonment. The rain had slowed to a drizzle now, but neither of them moved. They were frozen in this moment, teetering on the edge of reconciliation or permanent fracture. "Why?" she finally asked. "Why did they do it? Why did they separate us? Why did they tell us both that the other was dead or unreachable? What were they hiding that was worth destroying their own children?" That was the question that had haunted him every single day since he'd started piecing together the truth. The question that had led him down rabbit holes of private investigators, sealed records, and whispered conversations with family lawyers who'd been paid handsomely to keep their mouths shut. The question whose answer was so disturbing, so unthinkable that even now, kneeling in front of his sister, he wasn't sure he could say it out loud. But she deserved the truth. After everything she'd endured, after every lie she'd been fed, she deserved to know why her childhood had been stolen. "It wasn't about us," he said slowly, choosing each word carefully. "It was never about us. It was about protecting the family name. Our father, he wasn't just a businessman. He was involved in things, illegal things, things that could have brought down entire networks of powerful people. Money laundering, political bribes, connections to organized crime. I didn't know any of this when we were kids. I thought he was just another wealthy executive, but the night of the accident, it wasn't an accident at all." Her breath caught, Her fingers clutched at the wet fabric of her jacket. What do you mean it wasn't an accident? That night, when the car went off the bridge, there were 3 other vehicles involved. They ran us off the road. It was coordinated, professional. Someone wanted our parents dead, and they didn't care if we died too. But we survived. You and me. We survived, and that made us liabilities, because we'd seen faces, we'd heard voices. We were witnesses to an attempted hit that was supposed to look like a tragic accident. So our parents made a choice. They chose to save themselves and their empire by erasing us from each other's lives. They told you I was dead, so you'd never try to find me and accidentally lead dangerous people to our family. They told me you were safe and unreachable, so I'd stop asking questions. They scattered us to opposite ends of the country and hoped the people who wanted them dead would assume the job was finished. The words spilled out of him like poison he'd been holding in for too long. He'd learned this truth 6 months ago, after finally hiring an investigator brave enough or desperate enough to dig into sealed police records and offshore bank accounts. The revelation had shattered everything he thought he knew about his childhood, his parents, his own identity. He'd grown up thinking his father was a titan of industry, a self-made man who'd built an empire through hard work and vision. The reality was so much darker. His father had built that empire on blood money and backroom deals, and when the bill came due, he'd sacrificed his own children to pay it. "They're still alive, aren't they?" she asked, and her voice was barely a whisper. "Mom and Dad, they're still alive, living somewhere safe, probably still rich, while you thought I was unreachable and I thought you were dead." He nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. Yes, their parents were alive. They'd relocated to a private island in the Caribbean under new names, protected by the same criminal networks they'd once served. They'd made their deal with the devil and gotten everything they wanted: wealth, safety, anonymity. All it cost them was their children. All it cost them was their souls. She laughed then, but it wasn't a sound of joy. It was the laugh of someone who'd been holding on to hope for so long that its death had become absurd. So we were pawns, pieces to be moved around a board, sacrifices to save the king and queen. And they let me rot in foster care, let me end up here on this street because it was more convenient than admitting the truth, because our lives were worth less than their secrets. I'm so sorry. The words felt microscopic compared to the magnitude of what had been done to her, to them, to the family they should have been. I know sorry doesn't fix anything. I know it doesn't give you back the years they stole, but I need you to know that I never stopped being your brother. Even when I thought I couldn't reach you, even when I got lost in my own life, there wasn't a single day I didn't think about you. There wasn't a single success that felt complete, because you weren't there to share it. You were the missing piece of everything, and now that I've found you, I'm not letting go again. I don't care what it takes. I don't care who I have to fight. I'm getting you out of here, and I'm making this right. Sharing these heart-wrenching stories isn't easy, but if you feel the weight of these hidden bonds, of family secrets that shaped destinies, hit that subscribe button and join us. Your like can spread empathy, and your comment might share a story that touches another soul. Because these aren't just stories, they're reminders that behind every face on every street, there's a history we can't see, a pain we can't measure, and a humanity that connects us all. So stay with us. Let's walk this journey together. She was quiet for a long moment, her eyes searching his face for deception, for false promises, for the kind of hollow reassurance people offer when they don't really mean it. But whatever she saw there must have convinced her, because slowly, tentatively, she reached out her hand. Her fingers were cold and rough, marked by years of hardship he couldn't even imagine. But when they closed around his, when that connection was finally re-established after a decade of forced separation, something shifted in the universe. Something broken began to heal. It wasn't complete healing, it wasn't instant redemption, but it was a beginning. And sometimes, a beginning is all you need to find your way back home. He helped her to her feet, and for the first time in 10 years they stood face to face as brother and sister. She was taller than he remembered, though still shorter than him, and so terribly thin that he could see the bones of her wrists protruding through her skin. Her clothes hung on her frame like they belonged to someone else, someone with more substance, more presence in the world. But despite everything, despite the years and the suffering and the betrayal, there was still something unmistakably familiar about her. The way she tilted her head slightly when she was thinking, the small scar above her left eyebrow from when she'd fallen off her bike at age 7, the stubborn set of her jaw that used to appear whenever someone told her she couldn't do something. She was still in there, somewhere beneath all the pain. His sister was still in there, waiting to be found again. "Come with me," he said, gesturing toward the Mercedes. "Let me take you somewhere warm. Let me get you food, clean clothes, a place to sleep. We have so much to talk about, so much to figure out. But first, let's get you out of this rain." She hesitated, glancing at the few belongings scattered around her makeshift spot on the sidewalk. A backpack that had seen better days, a sleeping bag that was more holes than fabric, a plastic bag containing what he assumed were her most precious possessions. The entire sum of her life fit into 3 items she could carry. Meanwhile, his penthouse apartment had rooms he didn't even use, closets full of clothes he'd never worn, a wine collection worth more than most people earned in a year. The contrast was obscene. It was criminal. It was a visual representation of everything wrong with the world and everything wrong with the choices he'd made. "I can't just leave," she said quietly. "There are people here who rely on this spot. If I'm gone too long, someone else will take it, and then I'll have nowhere to come back to." The matter-of-fact way she said it, the casual acceptance of a reality where a patch of concrete was worth protecting, hit him harder than any accusation could have. This was her normal. This was what 10 years of abandonment had taught her. That everything could be taken away at any moment, that security was an illusion, that even a spot on a cold sidewalk was something worth fighting for because she'd learned the hard way that nothing was guaranteed. "You're not coming back here," he said firmly. "Ever. This isn't your home anymore. I know you don't trust me yet. I know I have to earn that back. But I'm asking you to take a leap of faith. Come with me now, and I promise you, I will spend every day proving that you matter more than any business deal, any amount of money, any part of the life I built without you. You are my priority now. You are my only priority." She looked at him for a long moment, and he could see the war happening behind her eyes. The part of her that wanted to believe him battling against the part that had learned to trust no one. The little girl who used to think her big brother could fix anything fighting against the woman who'd survived by depending only on herself. Finally, slowly, she nodded. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, I'll come. But if this is some kind of trick, if you're working with them, I need you to know that I've survived worse than anything you could do to me." The fact that she even had to say that she had to protect herself against the possibility of his betrayal, made him want to find their parents and make them answer for every single moment of suffering they'd caused. But revenge could wait. Right now, his sister needed warmth, food, safety, and the beginning of something that might someday become trust again. He helped her gather her belongings, treating each item with the respect and care it deserved, because these weren't just random objects. They were her survival tools, her security blankets, the physical evidence that she'd endured when everything else had tried to break her. The drive to his penthouse was silent, except for the sound of the rain on the windshield and the soft hum of the engine. She sat in the passenger seat like she was afraid to touch anything, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes fixed on the city passing by outside the window. He wanted to fill the silence with words, with explanations, with promises, but he'd learned in business that sometimes the most powerful communication happens in what you don't say. So he stayed quiet, letting her process, letting her adjust to the reality that her life had just changed completely in the span of 20 minutes. When they arrived at his building, she stared up at the glass and steel tower like it was from another planet. The doorman greeted him by name, nodding politely at his sister, without the judgment or disgust that she'd probably grown accustomed to seeing in people's eyes. He'd made sure years ago that his building staff treated everyone with dignity, never imagining that one day it would be his own sister walking through those doors in torn clothes and muddy shoes. They rode the elevator to the 42nd floor in silence, and when the doors opened directly into his private entrance, she let out a small gasp. His penthouse sprawled before them, all floor-to-ceiling windows and modern art and furniture that cost more than most people's cars. It was excessive. It was ostentatious. It was everything his parents had valued, and everything that suddenly felt meaningless in the presence of the person who actually mattered. "I know it's a lot," he said quietly. "I know it probably makes you hate me even more, seeing how I've been living while you were on the streets, and you have every right to that anger. But this place, all of this, it's as much yours as it is mine. More yours, actually, because you're the one who paid the real price for our parents' choices. I just got lucky. I got the easy road while you got hell. So please, make yourself at home. Everything here is yours. The guest room, the bathroom, the kitchen, all of it. Consider this your home now, for as long as you want it to be." She walked slowly into the living room, her footsteps leaving small wet marks on the hardwood floor, her eyes taking in every detail like she was memorizing it, or maybe trying to figure out if it was real. She paused in front of the windows, looking out at the city spread below them, all lights and life and possibility. "I used to dream about this," she said softly. "When I was in the worst foster homes, when I first ended up on the streets, I used to imagine that you were out there somewhere, living a good life, successful and happy. I told myself that at least one of us made it out, that at least one of us got to be okay, and I was right. You did make it out. You are okay. But I never imagined this. I never imagined that someday you'd find me and bring me into your world. I thought I'd die on those streets, just another forgotten person that nobody cared about." "I cared," he said, his voice breaking. "I always cared. I just didn't know how to find you. I didn't know the truth about what they'd done. But I'm here now. We're here now. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you know that you matter, that you always mattered, that every day you survived was a day you were winning even when it didn't feel like it." These stories of broken families and hidden truths aren't easy to witness, but they're real. They're happening in cities across the world right now. If you've ever felt the pain of separation, the weight of secrets, or the desperate hope of reconnection, join our community. Subscribe and share your story in the comments. Your experience matters. Your voice matters. Together, we shine light on the stories that need to be told, the truths that need to be heard, and the humanity that connects us all across every divide. She turned away from the window to face him, and for the first time, he saw tears streaming down her face. Not the silent tears she'd shed on the street, mixed with rain and bitterness. These were different. These were tears of release, of exhaustion, of a lifetime of held-back emotion finally finding permission to flow. "I'm so tired," she whispered. "I'm so tired of being strong. I'm so tired of surviving. I just want to rest. I just want to stop fighting for one single moment and know that I'm safe." "Then rest," he said gently. "You're safe now. I promise you, you're safe." The next 3 days passed like a fever dream, each hour peeling back another layer of the truth they'd both been denied. She slept for almost 20 hours straight that first night, her body finally surrendering to exhaustion it had been fighting for years. He sat in the chair beside the guest room door for most of that time, afraid that if he left, if he closed his eyes, she might disappear again. That she might wake up and decide this was too much, too overwhelming, too different from the survival she'd learned to navigate. But when she finally emerged, showered and wearing clean clothes he'd had delivered, there was something different in her eyes. Not trust, not yet, but maybe the beginning of hope, maybe the first fragile belief that this might actually be real. Over meals that she ate slowly, carefully, like someone who'd forgotten what it felt like to be full, they began to reconstruct the puzzle of their past. He showed her the documents he'd collected over the past 6 months. Police reports with redacted sections, financial records showing massive transfers to offshore accounts just days after the accident. Testimony from a retired detective who'd been paid to close the case quickly and quietly. Photographs of their parents boarding a private plane to the Caribbean 3 weeks after they'd supposedly died in grief. Each piece of evidence was a knife wound, confirming what they'd both started to suspect. Their parents hadn't just separated them, they'd orchestrated an elaborate lie that protected themselves while throwing their children to the wolves. "There's something else," he said on the 3rd evening, as they sat together watching the sunset paint the city in shades of amber and gold. Something I haven't told you yet because I wanted to wait until you felt stronger. But you deserve to know everything." She turned to look at him, and he could see her bracing herself for another blow, another revelation that would rewrite everything she thought she knew. "Our parents didn't just abandon us to protect themselves, they were paid to do it. The people who ran them off the road, the criminal network Dad was involved with, they made him a deal. Disappear, take his wife, keep quiet about everything he knew, and in exchange they'd leave him alive and wealthy. But there was one condition. He had to cut all ties with us. Completely. No contact, no support, no trail that could lead back to him. We were the price of his survival, and he paid it without hesitation." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with the weight of ultimate betrayal. It was one thing to be separated by circumstances, by danger, by impossible choices made in moments of panic. It was another thing entirely to be deliberately, calculatingly abandoned. To know that your parents had been given a choice between their children and their comfort, and they'd chosen comfort, that they'd valued their lifestyle, their safety, their precious reputation, more than the two lives they'd brought into the world. She was quiet for a long time, staring out at the city as darkness slowly swallowed the light. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady, almost eerily calm. "I used to make excuses for them in my head. Even when I was angry, even when I hated them, part of me always thought maybe they had a good reason. Maybe they were trying to protect us in some way I didn't understand. Maybe they loved us, but circumstances were just too complicated. But this isn't love. This isn't protection. This is cowardice. This is evil. And I'm done making excuses for people who never deserved them." She turned to face him, and in her eyes he saw something he hadn't seen before. Not just pain or anger, but determination, strength, the kind of fierce resolve that comes from hitting rock bottom and deciding you're done falling. What do we do now? Do we go after them? Do we expose what they did? Do we make them pay? He'd been asking himself the same questions for months. Part of him wanted revenge, wanted to use every resource at his disposal to drag their parents out of their comfortable exile and into the harsh light of justice, wanted to make them feel a fraction of the suffering they'd caused. But another part of him, the part that was tired of anger, tired of the weight of all this darkness, wanted something different. "I think we do something they never expected us to do," he said slowly. "I think we build a life they can never touch. I think we take all this pain, all this trauma, all these years of separation, and we transform them into something meaningful. We create a foundation that helps kids in foster care. We use my resources, my connections, my wealth, not to chase after ghosts who don't deserve our energy, but to make sure no other child has to go through what you went through. We turn their betrayal into our purpose. We turn their cruelty into our compassion. And we do it all without ever giving them another moment of our time or attention, because the best revenge isn't destroying them, it's proving that they didn't destroy us." A small smile played at the corners of her mouth, the first real smile he'd seen from her since their reunion. "I like that," she said softly. "I really like that. Using everything they tried to take from us to help others, making something beautiful out of something ugly. They wanted us erased, forgotten, broken. So we'll be the opposite. We'll be visible. We'll be remembered. We'll be whole. Or at least we'll work on becoming whole. Together." She reached over and took his hand, and this time there was no hesitation, no fear, no distance, just connection, just family, just two people who'd survived the unsurvivable and found each other on the other side. "I'm still angry," she admitted. "I'm still hurt. I'm probably going to be dealing with all of this for the rest of my life. But I'm also grateful. Grateful that you found me. Grateful that you didn't give up. Grateful that even though they tried to erase us from each other's lives, somehow we made it back. That has to mean something, right? That has to be proof that some bonds can't be broken no matter how hard people try." "It means everything," he said, squeezing her hand gently. "It means that blood might make you related, but choices make you family. And I choose you. Every single day for the rest of my life, I choose you. We're going to do this right. Therapy, healing, building trust, all of it. No shortcuts, no pretending everything's fine when it's not. Just honest work toward becoming the siblings we should have been allowed to be all along. Over the following months, they did exactly that. She moved permanently into the guest room, which slowly transformed into her room, filled with her books, her art, her gradually rebuilding life. He scaled back his business commitments, delegating more to trusted executives so he could be present for the sister he'd lost a decade of moments with. They started the foundation together, pouring their shared experience into an organization that would provide resources, support, and advocacy for foster children who'd fallen through the cracks of a broken system. Every child they helped felt like a small redemption, not of their parents' sins, but of their own failure to be there for each other when it mattered most. And their parents, they never reached out, never tried to explain, never showed even a flicker of remorse for the lives they'd shattered, but somehow that made it easier. It confirmed what they'd already come to understand, that some people aren't capable of love, only of self-preservation, that some wounds don't heal, they just teach you to build something stronger around them. That family isn't about who gave birth to you or shares your DNA, it's about who shows up, who stays, who chooses you over and over again, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. On the 1-year anniversary of that rainy Tuesday when everything changed, they stood together in the same spot where he'd found her. The storefront was different now, renovated into the headquarters of their foundation. The sidewalk where she'd sat with a cardboard sign was now the entrance to a place where hundreds of forgotten children would find hope, resources, and the message that they mattered, that they were seen, that someone was fighting for them. "You know what the craziest part is?" she said, looking up at the building they'd created together. "A year ago, I thought my story was over. I thought I'd die on this corner and nobody would even notice. But I was wrong. My story wasn't ending, it was just waiting for the next chapter. The chapter where I stopped being a victim and became a survivor. Where I stopped being alone and became part of something bigger. Where I stopped surviving and started living." He wrapped his arm around her shoulders, and she leaned into him, comfortable now with closeness, with trust, with the radical vulnerability of letting someone matter again. "Our parents tried to write us out of existence," he said quietly. "But here we are, writing our own story, and it's a story about resilience, about the unbreakable bonds between people who refuse to stay broken, about finding each other in the wreckage and building something beautiful from the ruins. This isn't the ending they wanted for us, but it's the one we're giving ourselves." This was their journey from separation to reunion, from betrayal to redemption, from brokenness to healing. But there are countless others still waiting for their chapter to begin, still sitting on cold corners hoping someone will see them, still believing their story is over when it's only just beginning. If this touched you, if you've ever felt lost or abandoned, or like you didn't matter, remember this. Your story isn't over either. Join our community. Subscribe and share your voice. Comment with your own experiences of loss and finding, of family and forgiveness, of surviving the unsurvivable. Because every story matters, every voice deserves to be heard, and together we create the world where no one is forgotten, where every person is seen, where every life is honored as the precious, irreplaceable miracle it truly is. Thank you for being here. Thank you for witnessing this journey. And thank you for being part of the community that believes in second chances, in healing, and in the enduring power of human connection.